Hey everybody, and Tony here with my review of Mozart's Die Zauberflöte with conductor Dominik Limburg, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. This marks the third time I saw this production of Mozart's Die Zauberflöte at the Deutsche Oper Berlin because I wanted to see and hear Hye-Young Moon sing the Queen of the Night after seeing her a couple of weeks ago sing the role of the Fiakermilli from Strauss's Arabella. I argued in my review of Strauss's Arabella that Hye-Young Moon has potential to keep on growing as a singer in terms of her pristineness and precision as a young lyric coloratura soprano. Those same sentiments still hold up in terms of her performance as the Queen of the Night, but with a few reservations here and there. While I did like her commanding stage presence, and while I did find that she had the right temperament in terms of combining the Queen's icy regalness with fiery agility and did not make her a madwoman but a total ice queen, her voice was not really that suitable for singing something that demanding, let alone that dramatic as the Queen of the Night, although she did sing relatively well and also handled a lot of the coloratura and was sufficiently agile and flexible with her runs and even hitting those high notes. If you have watched me for the past 10 years that I've been making reviews on YouTube, you will already know that I love a dramatic coloratura soprano singing the Queen of the Night. Not a light coloratura, not even a lyric coloratura, a true dramatic coloratura soprano who has not only the agility and the high notes, but also that sufficient vocal strength, that meatiness, as well as that terrifying vocal presence to be well combined with that vocal agility, thus making the Queen of the Night a force to be reckoned with. When comparing Hye-Young Moon to the likes of Elissa Elitsa, Selma Kurt, Berta Kurina, Frida Hempel, Maria Gerhardt, Melita Haim, Jarmila Novotná, who was also well known for singing Pamina, Serafima Dineva, Ray Woodland, Colette Laurent, Jutta Fulpius, Christiane Zorel, also famous Pamina, but also once sang the Queen of the Night, Margareta Hallen, Christina Deutekom, Christiane Eda-Pierre, Silvia Gesti, Sonja Put, Ursula Kossuth, and Monica Pick-Hieronymi, Miss Moon lacks that overall vocal incision to make the Queen of the Night a truly terrifying character, as well as that dramatic weight to be well combined with that fiery agility. Even dramatic coloratura sopranos of the 1980s to the 1990s, such as June Anderson, Sharon Kreisman, Sally Wolf, Kathleen Casello, Helen Kwon, Ingrid Kaiserfeld, and Claudia Kunz-Eisenlohr had far more secure techniques as well as stronger voices to make the role of the Queen of the Night truly terrifying and an absolutely strong force to be reckoned with, all thanks to their sterling techniques as well as their full-sounding voices, especially where the likes of Sally Wolf, Kathleen Casello, Helen Kwon, and Ingrid Kaiserfeld are concerned. And if we're talking about more old-school dramatic coloratura sopranos, look no further than Margareta Hallen, Christina Deutekom, Sonja Put, Rita Shane, Edda Moser, Ursula Kossuth, and Monica Pick-Hieronymi, who also had strong temperaments to make the Queen of the Night truly terrifying, as well as powerful vocal heft to make this Queen an absolute force to be reckoned with. Hye-Young Moon may have the notes. She may have some of the chest tones, as well as use her top Fs to the best of her abilities, as well as handle the coloratura runs effectively. However, when all is said and done, Hye-Young Moon, despite her great vocal efforts to make the Queen of the Night come to life, was still rather lightweight when she sang this role, and the other vocal issue that Hye-Young Moon had was her inverted vibrato and the occasions in which her voice didn't sound totally supported. All vocal caveats that Hye-Young Moon had aside, I thought that she was able to tackle this role with everything she got, vocal flaws and all, and make the Queen of the Night her own. And while she may not reach those towering heights of the true dramatic coloratura sopranos who sang the Queen of the Night, she was still able to do what she can to make the role her own, as well as provide her own spin on this character. If she can continue to develop her voice well and coordinate both her head voice and chest voice, and even fix that inverted vibrato, I'm sure that she could also conquer roles like Lucia Ashton from Lucia de Lammermoor, Amina from Sonambula, Elvira from I Puritani, Violetta from La Traviata, Amalia from I Masnadieri, Giovanna d'Arco, and even Marguerite de Valois from Les Huguenots, Isabelle from Robert le Diable, Berthe from Le Prophète, Lakme, considering that she once upon a time sang Ellen from that same opera, and even Massenet Manon and Fiordiligi from Mozart's Cose fan tutte. The possibilities for this young coloratura soprano are absolutely endless, and I would really love to see and hear her develop her instrument the best way she can, thus developing her coordinated chest voice to the best of her abilities, as well as fix the issues that would have otherwise marred her performance in anything that she's in. So here's hoping for Hye-Young Moon to keep on progressing as a singer as well as an overall artist. Because as I stated before, she does have potential to keep on growing, and I do not ever want to hear her talents being wasted away. Heidi Stober is certainly no stranger to singing Pamina, considering that she has been singing this role for about a good 10 to 20 years. She's been keeping this role in her repertoire, and she has always continued to find something new about this particular princess. What I noticed about her performance as Pamina tonight was that she was able to make her far more independent, a lot feistier, and more strong-willed, thus making her a totally complete character. That strong sense of characterization is also reflected in her signature lyric soprano voice, which continues to be as charismatic as ever, but it also had some vocal flaws in terms of shaky coordination, as well as her chest tones not being as full or even rich as they are supposed to be. Even when comparing her to the likes of Elisabeth Schumann, Lotte Schöne, Jarmila Novotna, Elfriede Trötschel, Hilde Guden, Lisa de la Casa, René Doria, Lucina Mara, Vilma Lipp, Melita Musseli, Judith Raskin, Ruth Margaret Putz, Anna Moffo, Colette Boki, Valerie Masterson, Ileana Kotrubash, Patricia Wise, Faye Robinson, and Gail Robinson, to name a few. She kind of lacks that additional coordination, let alone that completeness in her technique to make her performance as Pamina a lot more fully realized. Nevertheless, with all of those vocal caveats aside, Heidi Stober was still a committed singing actress who was able to let her trademark lyric soprano voice shine throughout the theater and even belt out some amazing high notes, thus making her performance of Pamina absolutely thrilling to watch, as she's always been as a performer. She does not hold back with her commitment as a singing actress, and I also thought that she was able to stand tall as she always was as a fine performer. There was not one moment where she retreated, and she was able to give everything that she's got. I would even love to see and hear her one day as Constance, Juliette, Mireille, Manon, Cendrillon, Louise, Mélisande, Mignon, Mimi from La Bohème, Magda from La Rondine, and even Antonia from Le Comte of Man, because Heidi Stober does have the right voice to sing these type of roles. The possibilities for Mrs. Stober are absolutely endless, and she has definitely continued to prove herself as a fine singing actress in terms of her performance as Pamina. So I still have to give her a lot of credit where credit was due in terms of her commitment, as well as what she was able to accomplish as Pamina. Alexandra Hutton has been singing the role of Papagena for about a good 10 to 11 years, and here she was at her strongest performance yet. Furthermore, she continues to steal the show in that particular role, all thanks to her trademark silvery, light lyric soprano voice, which is shimmering, sweet, and absolutely pleasant to listen to. She is quite up there with the likes of Adele Kern, Lotte Schöne, Graziella Schutti, Renate Holm, Renate Kramer, Gertrud Friedmann, Gudrun Sieber, And my personal favorites, Lisa Otto and Rosel Schweiger as a very fine singer of Papagena. And she's always had that supremely pristine vocalism to prove just that. With her trademark silvery and agile light lyric soprano voice, it's no wonder why I love Alexandra Hutton as Papagena, especially since she combines her pristine vocalism with great acting, which she was able to accomplish with aplomb as well as with sheer beauty, to the point where I was incredibly in awe of everything that Alexandra Hutton continued to contribute, not only as Papagena, but also as a fine interpreter of these soubrette and light lyric soprano roles. She has continued to go from strength to strength, and her performance as Papagena is not just laudable, but absolutely outstanding. The singing from the three ladies from Maria Motoligina's gorgeous lirico spinto soprano voice, which can belt out some really wonderful high notes as the first lady, Karis Tucker's more mellow lyric mezzo voice being put to fabulous use as the second lady, and Mère Thérèse Carmac's deeper, fuller lyric mezzo voice also being put to fabulous use as the third lady, was an absolute vocal delight from beginning to end. Maria Motoligina, Karis Tucker, and Mère Thérèse Carmac were able to use their voices to the best of their abilities to make these ladies come to life, as well as have pristine techniques, as well as combine their vocal powers with Maria Motoligina's pristineness, Karis Tucker's mellowness, and Mère Thérèse Carmac's sufficient depth to make the three ladies absolutely stirring in their own special ways. So brava to Maria Motoligina, brava to Karis Tucker, and brava to Mère Thérèse Carmac for making the three ladies absolutely awesome, both vocally and theatrically. And here's hoping for more leading lady roles from Maria Motoligina, Karis Tucker, and Mère Thérèse Carmac, because the future is certainly bright for these wonderful young singers. I also have to salute the soloists of the Tölzer Knabenchor for also using their angelic voices to bring the three boys to life, and they were able to sing as sweetly as possible, thus emitting youthful boyish charm to the three boys, as well as sing their music absolutely well. Tobias Kira as Zarastro stole the show from not only the male performers' feet, but also from everybody else's feet tonight. I have seen this basso cantante slash basso profondo grow from strength to strength, and ever since I first saw and heard him 10 years ago as Zarastro, I was quite interested to see where his career was gonna go. And tonight's performance as Sarastro proved that he was able to go from strength to strength, as well as grow in depth, richness, and overall fortitude and formidability. There was not one vocal flaw I had with Tobias Kira as Zarastro, although there have been stronger and deeper and darker voices who sang this role, including Ludwig Weber, Alexander Kipnis, Ezio Pinza, Gottlob Frick, Kurt Böhmer, Josef Greindl, Jerome Hines, Giorgio Tozzi, Cesare Sieppi, John McCurdy, Bengt Rundgren, Karl Ridderbusch, Martti Talvela, and Evgeny Nesterenko, just to name a few. However, I can still argue that Tobias Kira was in a class of his own, all thanks to his strong vocal presence, as well as his always virile and handsome stage presence, thus making his performance as Sarastro a whole lot stronger every time he sang this role. So I definitely salute Tobias Kira for continuing to do such a fine job as Sarastro. Equally strong of a basso cantante slash basso profondo was Patrick Getty as the second-armed man. He too is also well known for singing Zarastro, and he also used that strong and booming basso voice to make the best out of the second-armed man, thus making him an absolutely imposing character. And he does stand toe-to-toe with Martti Talvela as one of my favorite interpreters of the second-armed man, all thanks to that booming quality in his voice, as well as that manly virility that I love in many a bass. Therefore, Patrick Getty was totally outstanding as a singer in that particular role, and he definitely deserves a lot of praise for what he was able to accomplish. Michael Bartadze was vocally a lot better than I expected as the Speaker of the Temple. This time his voice was a lot deeper, and it had a lot more richness, and it didn't sound too nasal at all. However, I'm still missing that additional depth and sonority that I love with singers singing the Speaker of the Temple, especially when it comes to either bass baritones or even character basses. Basses such as Plinio Klabasi and bass baritones such as Hans Hotta left a stronger impression on me, all thanks to their sterling techniques and even stronger chest tones, thus making the Speaker of the Temple a formidable figure. Nevertheless, with Michael Bartadze, the fact that he was able to surprise me in terms of how he was able to grow in depth and richness was something that I considered to be laudable. And I do hope that he continues to grow in depth and richness because, as I stated before, when he sang Paolo Albiani, and even the many roles that he continued to sing, he does have great material to work with. I just do not want him to give into bad habits, let alone squander his talents. His choice of repertoire, as well as his stage presence, and the fact that he was able to improve vocally were all attributes that I considered to be laudable of Michael Bartadze's vocal performance as the speaker, as well as everything that he continues to do as a singing actor. Horik Rowan as the first priest did manage to grow in vocal strength as well as vocal beauty, thus not having any problems mar him. Jorge Puerta managed to make great use of his full lyric tenor voice as the first armed man, and he was also vocally strong, although not as strong as James King, let alone Howard Vanderburg, who are my two favorite singers of the first armed man. Nevertheless, Jorge Puerta's technical prowess, sufficient vocal strength, as well as his rock-steady technique were all great attributes as to what made his performance as the first armed man truly something to behold. And his voice, although it was overpowered by Patrick Getty's second armed man, was still as pliable and as plush as it has always been, and even had that great focus that made him quite well known, not only in the lyric tenor roles of Rodolfo and Edgardo, but also in heavier roles such as Radames and Calaf. I will continue to root for Jorge Puerta in terms of his subsequent performances, and his performance as the first armed man was not only laudable, but absolutely outstanding. Philip Yecal's Papageno was wonderfully acted, and his voice did continue to grow in depth, but there was still something about his voice that was rather lacking. That is not to fault Philip Yecal in terms of his invigorating and extraordinary acting as Papageno. He was able to make us, the audience, feel for him and make us feel thoroughly involved with every shenanigan he gets himself into. And that's an attribute I can definitely applaud Philip Yecal as Papageno. However, when he started singing, his voice still sounded not so supported, but it did get better later on throughout the opera as his voice was getting a lot more coordinated, but it still had that lightish color to it that I'm not too crazy about. In fact, if you compare Philip Yecal to baritones such as Giuseppe Taddei, Gerhard Husch, Carl Schmidt-Walter, Walter Berry, Hermann Prey, and Vladimiro Ganzarolli, Philip Yecal is still lacking in that baritonal depth that is necessary for making Papageno come alive as a character. Although he did get vocally better in the second half of the opera, especially considering that his voice was slightly fuller, I still believe that Philip Yecal does need to continue developing his voice in the right way, as well as eliminate any form of mask singing, sing more in the pharynx, and use those chest tones well, because that's the money spot right there. Those chest tones will be able to be the great attributes that he needs in order to improve as a singer. In fact, I could see him in more dramatic roles such as Valentin from Faust, Golo from Péléas et Mélisande, Mercutio from Romeo et Juliette, and maybe in a couple years' time, Enrico from Lucia de Lammermoor and Ford from Falstaff. There's still a lot of ground for Philippe Jekyll to cover in terms of his voice, and I do not want to see him squander his talents anytime soon. There's a lot of potential for Mr. Jekyll to keep on growing as a singing actor. And I'm sure that if he continues to develop his chest tones and even strengthen his voice the best way possible, he can definitely reach those great heights that will make him a lot more accomplished as a singing actor. I am extremely conflicted with Kieran Carell's performance as Tamino. Yes, he does have boyish charm. Yes, he was able to sing everything without a wobble. And yes, he was able to exude charisma that also reflected Tamino's youthfulness and his coming of age story, going from this proud youth to a more enlightened man. However, the attribute that remained Kieran Carell's Achilles heel is none other than his nasality, his maskiness, and the fact that with those vocal caveats, he couldn't do much vocal acting. Even when he tries to sing dramatically, his nasality, his maskiness, and that lack of true support from his voice just mar his overall performance and make his performance as Tamino rather uninspiring because of his nasality and maskiness. Which is a huge shame, because Kieran Carell does have a lot of wonderful material to work with. He can also use that material to the best of his abilities, but he really needs to get rid of that nasality and maskiness if he is to continue developing as a tenor. Even when pitting Kieran Carell against tenors such as Bela van Kearney, Richard Taube, Helga Roswenge, Coleman von Pataki, Andreas Dippel, Luigi Infantino, Giacinto Prandelli, Rudolf Schock, Walter Ludwig, Juan Oncina, Fritz Wunderlich, Nikolai Gedda, Peter Schreier, and even Siegfried Jerusalem and Peter Hoffmann, who, mind you, Jerusalem and Hoffmann were more of full lyric / spinto tenors than actual Heldentenors, and they were also very well known for singing Tamino, and I would even rely on them more as Tamino than Tristan and Sigmund combined. They all had fuller, stronger, and more focused as well as cleaner voices than what Kieran Carell could ever accomplish. And I'm sure that if Mr. Carell took notes from Walter Ludwig, Fritz Wunderlich, Richard Taube, Helga Roswenge, Bela van Kearney, Coleman von Pataki, and even Julius Patzak in terms of how they sounded like as Tamino, especially where Walter Ludwig is concerned because of the fullness and richness of his voice. Oh, and lest I forget about Peter Anders, Lorenz Weinberger, and Peter Schreier, who also had pristine techniques to sing Tamino. I'm sure that if Kieran Carell could take notes from these great tenors of the past, he would definitely get rid of that nasality and maskiness that otherwise mar his vocal performance. At least I can give him some credit for being courageous enough to tackle Tamino, but he just needs to get rid of that nasality and maskiness for good and for all, and really focus his vocal energy on the pharynx to make his voice truly ring throughout the theater and to do a whole lot more vocal acting, especially when coordinating head voice and chest voice. There is a lot of potential to be found with Kieran Carell. I just do not want his nasality and maskiness to be too much of a huge issue, because if they remain an issue, he will continue to deliver uninspiring performances. If he takes that maskiness and nasality away, his performances could potentially be a lot more inspiring. Jörg Schörner was able to be vocally stronger as the second priest, and even Jörg Schörner was able to be a strong actor as he's always been. So I still have to salute Horik Rowan and Jörg Schörner for wonderful jobs as the two priests, as well as put their fine chemistry to exceptional use. What more can I say about Burkhard Ulrich as Monostatos? He was as characterful as he has always been, and he is no stranger to singing this role. He constantly finds the beauty in that particular role, all thanks to his trademark character tenor voice, and his vocal acting as Monostatos remains unparalleled. Yes, the likes of Gerhard Stolze and Friedrich Lenz, as well as Erwin Wohlhardt, cannot be denied at all, especially where the likes of Gerhard Stolze and Friedrich Lenz are concerned, because they also had stirringly strong techniques to make Monostatos come alive. However, with Burkhard Ulrich, he was in a class of his own, and this is a role that fit him perfectly like a glove. So overall, the singing did vary from quality to quality. Yes, Hye-Young Moon may be a fine queen of the night, albeit not vocally sufficient for that particular role in terms of dramatic temperament, let alone dramatic weight. But she was still able to be valiant in tackling that role with everything she's got, and has a lot of potential to keep on growing as a fine coloratura soprano, so long as she gets rid of that inverted vibrato, as well as develop her technique the right way, so that she can grow in pristineness, precision, accuracy, and agility. There's a lot of great potential for Hye-Young Moon to keep on growing, and her star should not be fading anytime soon, because that is a voice right there that can grow the best way possible. It's just that it needs further polishing, as well as a lot of discipline and strengthening to make her voice truly shine. Aside from Hye-Young Moon doing a fine job as the Queen of the Night, there was also Heidi Stober, who continues to sing up a storm as Pamina, Alexandra Hutton, who continues to be an absolute darling as Papagena, even to the point where she even stole the show from both Hye-Young Moon and Heidi Stolber as the Queen of the Night and Pamina respectively, as well as Maria Motoligina, Karis Tucker, and Mère-Thérèse Carmack making vocal magic as the three ladies, the soloists of the Tölzer Knabenchor being absolute darlings as the three boys, Tobias Kehra being as strong as ever as Zarastro, Patrick Getty being truly formidable as the second arm man, Michael Bachtadze actually improving as the speaker of the temple, with his voice becoming deeper and richer, Horik Rowan showing sufficient authority as the first priest, Jorge Puerta's well-coordinated and beautifully sung full lyric tenor voice being put to fabulous use as the first armed man, Philip Yeka's charming Papageno, although he could use a lot more vocal development, Kieran Carell's boyishness as Tamino, although he does also need a lot more vocal development, and even get rid of that maskiness and nasality to make his voice truly shine. Jörg Schörner also being a strong performer as the second priest, and Burkhard Ulrich stealing the show as Monostatos, and building the individual strengths that each of these singers have to something that is quite worthwhile listening to as well as viewing, certainly made my evening, despite some of the flaws to be found here and there. Nevertheless, despite the varying qualities in the singers, they were still able to remain as professional as possible, as well as be as courageous as they can with their respective roles, with Hye-Young Moon being an absolute trooper as the Queen of the Night, even though her voice does not really fit the dramatic weight, let alone that fiery intensity necessary for that particular role, but I digress. She was still able to be as valiant as a performer, and I do hope that she continues to develop her voice the best way possible, and even make sure that her voice remains in mint condition for years to come. The conducting done by Dominik Limburg was solid all the way through, especially when he does his best to make the orchestra involved, as well as make it dramatic, and even make sure that it has those moments of excitement. However, there have been occasions where he did lag, and there were occasions in which the singers just did not sync well with the orchestra, and there were also occasions in which he did go too fast, thus showing a lot of moments of inconsistency to be found here and there. Sometimes there were occasions in which the listening experience was rather compromised, whether it was the three ladies trying to argue who gets the sfrutamino, or even the three boys second trio, or even those moments in which the singers just didn't really see eye to eye with the orchestra. I thought that he kind of did go all over the place in terms of what he was able to accomplish, which is kind of a shame because he was very involving as a conductor. And in terms of the overture, there were occasions in which the brass did override the rest of the orchestra, which is a total shame because the overture is supposed to be harmonious. Despite the issues I had with Dominik Limburg as a conductor, he was still able to keep everybody involved for better or for worse. And what more can you expect from the chorus and the orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin? Everybody was a pro, and they were all able to work well off of each other, although there were some moments of miscommunication, but that's neither here nor there. They were able to keep marching on, as well as help out in providing the audience with a fascinating listening experience. Hye-Young Moon is a solid queen of the night through and through, and I definitely wish the best for her performances in the future. And I also wish great vocal development from her. Despite her voice being a tad bit light for the queen of the night, she was still able to be a committed performer through and through, and I thought that she was able to carry the evening quite well. And there were also some strong singers to help boost the performance up a lot more, especially where the likes of Tobias Kira, Patrick Getty, and even Michael Bagdadze were concerned, and lest I forget about Alexandra Hutton making a meal out of Papagena, as well as everything that she accomplished as a singing actress. Every singer managed to give their own spin on their characters, as well as be as committed to their craft as they've always been, even when there were inconsistencies in Dominik Limburg's conducting. They all managed to push forward, and they were able to give some fine vocal performances. And for those of you who caught this performance of the Zauberflöte at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what'd you think of it? Did you enjoy Hye-Young Moon's performance as the Queen of the Night? Did you feel that her voice was alright for this role? Did you feel that there was something that you could have wanted to see her improve as the Queen of the Night? Or did you feel that she was totally unfit to sing this particular role? Please comment below and let me know. Well, that's it for my review of Mozart's Die Zauberflöte at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, starring Hye-Young Moon as the Queen of the Night. Tune in next time for my review of a concert that I will be watching at the Radio Symphony Orchestra Berlin. So until then, good night everybody.